Verimatrix is a company that does a whole bunch of stuff. What do they do? Because it's not a household name. So why should tell me what you do, what Verimatrix does, and how it pertains to what's going on here?
Sure. So Verimatrix, we are by the way based in San Diego and in France. So we are split, and we are doing cybersecurity, but we've been doing it before it was called cybersecurity. We started doing it in 1995, if you can believe it, protecting many different devices. And this was in the time that automotive didn't have that much of software and was not in the top news for cybersecurity. So if you look at the products that we are protecting, it's a big range from financial applications that are running on mobile phones into routers in your home, up to the set-top box that running any TV that you have or streaming application that you have on a smartphone to protect the content there. So basically, we have a lot of solutions or different solutions that protects different markets, and one of these markets is the automotive. Now, we do not provide the security, all the security that a car needs, but we cover some of the needs of the security in the car.
Okay. So can you tell us what cars? I know being that it's a security thing, that may not be something you're allowed to talk about, but can you give us some idea of like how many cars you guys are involved with, or what vehicles, or what kind of vehicles?
So we are in one of the top three, and we are protecting mostly the code, and there are different parts that we are doing, and we can talk about what is the problems that needs to be solved and why we need to protect the code. We are running also on mobile applications that today allows you to control the car remotely. So you probably know that in order to open the car, some car manufacturers allows you to do a smart access to the car. Tesla even allow you to control the car remotely, right? Even Samanet. If we look at cars, 30, 40 years ago, it was mostly machines, right? There was no computer code. But in today's cars, people sometimes don't realize the amount of code, or what we call software, that is running there.
Now, why it is important? Because these lines of code, or what we call software, is written by people. And people make mistakes. And there is something that we call in the industry bug density. It means that there is certain amount of bugs for every amount of software or lines of code. And for that generally software that somebody writes, it's about between 10 to 50 bugs per 1,000 lines of code.
Wow.
Now, if you're having much more strict testing and the reviews, you can get it much lower. And I hope that automotive software is better than the industry standard or average. But still, even if it's much lower, even we are talking about one or a half, or let's say one bug per 5,000 lines of code. If you have 10 million lines of code in the car, it means that there are a lot of bugs there. And why does it matter? Because these bugs are, excuse me, the way that hackers actually get and hack things. We like to think that it's like in the Hollywood movies, when they sit on their computer and doing and immediately hack a device and get in. But in reality, what hackers are doing is that they start to examine this code, reverse engineer it, and see where somebody make a mistake, or some of the programmer made a mistake. Now, what makes software even less secure is when it is provided from many different sources. and then it's combined together. And in these stitches where they put the software together, there are a lot of vulnerabilities happening because it's usually not very coordinated. And the amount of software suppliers in the car, when you look at the manufacturer's supply chain and the different components that are getting the car, are tremendous.
Okay, hold on just a second. That's an epiphany right there. So you're saying that our cars, and we all know the cars are running software, but you're saying that the software is coming from multiple different providers.
Yeah.
And then they mash it all together and more or less hope that it all runs smoothly.
No, I would not say hope or something like that. They're doing a lot of tests, right? So let's give them the credit. I'm just saying that usually, statistically, when you get software coming from different components, think about it like you're renovating your house and there are multiple companies providing multiple parts that eventually all needs to come together. It works, but there is more chances that somebody will make something wrong and it will not fit in the corner where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, or the plumber runs the water through the electrician's workspace or something.
Oh, nice.
Yes, exactly. So in the software, somebody's doing an operation and he doesn't aware that this operation caused something else for somebody else. And the thing with when you have bugs when the car doesn't run, or they detect it in testing. But when you have a bug that just causes vulnerability that is dormant in the code, it's very difficult to find it. So more lines of code means what we call attack surface, which is bigger, because it gives more opportunities for the hackers to get.
Sure.
And so the first thing that happened in the car, or if we look at the evolution of cars, is the amount of code. But the second thing that happened and changed the game is internet connectivity. Because before internet connectivity, in order to, even if you find a vulnerability in the car, in order to get to that vulnerability, you have to have physical proximity to the car. And that's not so attractive. I mean, it's good for researchers that want to find a name for them, but at the end of the day, if I want to sabotage a car and I'm like in physical proximity, I don't need to be a hacker. I can do other things that are more low-tech.
Right. Sure, sure.
So, but once you add the internet connectivity, that means that potentially everyone in the world that have access to the internet can access the car.
And we saw that a couple times with several major manufacturers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sure. Sure. We've seen that, yeah, with several companies. So as I understand what you do, and I'm just going to repeat this back to see if I'm getting it. You look at OEM's code for various systems. In the case of this show, mostly vehicles we're interested in, and you examine it, look for defects, look for bugs, to make it more secure.
Not exactly, but
Okay.
this is part of the ecosystem of making sure that cars code is secure. So the first layer is what you're saying. So the first layer, they need to be somebody that's testing it, and there are different ways to test. So what you want to do is to reduce this bug density, to find as many of these vulnerabilities before the code goes to market. But what we are doing is we take, after you clean the code, or try to clean it as much as possible, we make it very difficult to read and to reverse engineer or to change. So what we do is, if you think about it, in order to find this vulnerability, hackers needs to understand how the code runs, how it operates. So they do what's called reverse engineering of the code. If the code is not readable and they cannot see what's going on and understand, it's very difficult for them to find these bugs that left. Because even when you try to clean it, the code, there will always be things that left. So we first make it very difficult for them to find it. But then if they find something, finding the vulnerability means that you got your foot in the door. But in order to do something that the car is not intended to do, you need to inject your own code. So if you think about it, a computer is something, or the hardware is something that is stupid, basically, and it just follow what the software tells it to do. So the goal of the hackers is to put a piece of software that he wrote there to tell this component to do something else than what it intended to.
Right.
Wow.
So we detect in real time that the code is changed and somebody tried to execute a code that was not intended to be executed. And we are doing it in real time. And that allows to provide another layer that makes it difficult for hackers to even if they found a vulnerability, to be able to what we call exploit this vulnerability.
What happens? I mean, I'm sure you don't just like seize up the car or whatever, but I mean, let's say a change is detected. What happens?
So it depends where it is. When it's in something that is not critical, you can crash the application. So for example, if it's an application that the hacker tried to hack and it's in the phone and it's control the car, you can crash it and get the hacker frustrated. But you're right, if it's a component in the car, in the vehicle, you cannot crash it. However,
you have to be careful when you're using crash and car in the same sentence.
I just feel like
It's
crash the
software malfunction.
Yeah.
so crashing, right? Let's say we try to stop the execution of the
Program
car.
from executing.
Yes.
So what's again, if we go to the image that we have of a hacker that immediately gets in and say, yes, I'm in, I got to the car. In reality, they find a vulnerability and then they try different things. It's a process that sometimes takes a month or even more to find out. And each time they fail, they crash, we detect it. And we pass it on to a component that provides it to a cloud service, not ours, but we report it to the OEM or whoever uses our solution. And then they can start to see, all right, in this part of the code, there was a detection of somebody tried to modify it. And then it can pinpoint them to look, all right, what's wrong with this code? Probably there is a bug there if somebody went to look. So they can now know, instead of looking at all of these 10 millions of lines of code, they can say, okay, this specific line, there is a problem. Let's look what's going wrong. And then they're saying, oh, we forgot to protect that, or we forgot to do that. And then they can fix it before the hacker managed to develop the exploit that will do something bad.